Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. We're having another series in our ongoing discussion for PRI's Young Leaders Circle speaker series. Today we're really excited. We're gonna have another really great policy discussion. We have Danielle Butcher is here with the American Conservation Coalition. Danielle, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Evan. It's exciting to be here.
Yeah, I stumbled across you guys and I thought what a great time to be talking about as the new Biden administration is coming in, some new changes federally, and I'm sure for bigger states like California, to talk about free market focused environmental policies, which I don't think too many people hear those terms together, unfortunately. Maybe let's start at the beginning. Tell us a little more about how the American Conservation Coalition got started.
Absolutely. The American Conservation Coalition is about 3.5 years old, and we were founded by a group of young conservatives who really cared about the environment and about climate change and didn't feel that our side of the aisle had an appropriate or sufficient response to those issues. And so we wanted to not only be able to voice our concern, but also be able to advocate for solutions that would work for everyone. And so that's why ACC was started. It was probably about 5 or 6 of us at the beginning, and over the last 3.5 years, we've grown into a national movement with 220 college campuses and over 100 different branches across the nation.
Yeah, take us through the branches, and a lot of them are affiliated at colleges. Take us through each one of those and what their role is.
Yeah, absolutely. So originally we started on college campuses. Most of our founders were around college age, and that was kind of the easiest network for us to tap into. And our campus program, just exploded. Like I said, we're on 220 college campuses at this point. But the more we operated on college campuses and the more we began to be recognizable by other people, the more we realized that there are people outside of college who also want a message like ours. And so we established the branch system, which is essentially the same as the college system, except it's based in either a region or a city. So it's essentially our version of chapters, and they're available for all members to join and growing every single day.
And what's the main mission that ACC is pushing? Was there something that you said 4 or 5 of you started it? Did you see something missing? I'm thinking from around our time, Al Gore and kind of this newer environmental movement. Was there something missing that you guys didn't see or wanted to represent something else?
Absolutely. Our mission at ACC is to change the narrative on environmentalism and on the environmental movement at large, both on the political side of things, but also on the cultural side of things. I think a lot of times you'll find that when talking about the environment, people oftentimes take on a very doom and gloom approach. And we don't want to take that sort of approach. We think that there's a lot to be excited about, a lot to be hopeful about, and that the environmental movement really can be and should be one of positivity, because everyone enjoys the environment. Everybody wants to protect the environment, and it's something that should bring us all together.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think recently, you hit on doom and gloom. What are challenges as you guys were building chapters, as you guys were growing? What were some of the challenges that you guys ran into from maybe the traditional environmentalists?
Mm-hmm. So I will say we were better received than we anticipated we would be. We thought that there would be a lot of pushback, but I think by and large, people were glad to see us stepping onto the scene and representing a new voice. I would say one challenge that we have had that's been a bit frustrating is oftentimes these environmental groups will claim to be nonpartisan or claim to be open to working with everyone, and we found that that's just not the case.
One of the areas I wanted to touch on is a survey that you all did, and I actually didn't see a year on it, but could you share some of the findings? I thought it was interesting. It was younger folks, younger audience, and maybe just share when you guys did it and some of the main takeaways.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year we did a poll of, I believe it was 18 to 35-year-olds across all political spectrums. And our target demographic was likely voters. And it was really, really fascinating polling. And I'll just highlight some of the key things that we found, which was that 53% of left-leaning voters and 64% of moderate voters responded that they would be more likely to vote for a Republican candidate if that candidate had a climate plan, which I think is huge messaging for the GOP to take a hint on. The fact that they could pull over some votes if they would just offer something on this issue is huge. And then we also found that 77% of Republican leaning voters said that climate change is important to them. So we oftentimes hear this narrative that the right doesn't care about climate change. And our polling found that that's just not true.
Do you think that's been received? I mean, I don't know if this year probably wasn't a good example, but you are right. I think we're finally at the point that most folks agree something's happening. You know, the data is there. I hope we're to the point where that's almost, you can't argue that anymore. Do you think more Republicans are getting the message, whether that's Congress or maybe any successes you guys have had at the state level with more conservative candidates?
Yeah, I do think that this is a message that is becoming more and more mainstream with the GOP, even if it's not at the top of the ticket. It's still something that the party as a whole is starting to embrace. I mean, pre-COVID, we actually saw Kevin McCarthy introduce a climate package, which was unfortunately overshadowed by, current events of the time, and COVID was just taking off when that was happening. So it didn't quite get the attention it deserved. But I do think that by and large, people who are living in reality have now moved from discussing whether or not climate change is happening to what it is we should do about it.
We love Kevin McCarthy. He was actually our guest on our 100th podcast episode for PRI. So he's good people, as we like to say.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, let's look. New administration coming in. Biden, he's slowly filling his cabinet. Are there? Let's take this two ways. Are there any positives maybe going into this that you guys are looking at now, or you guys are looking forward to as new policies, new laws that Biden and his cabinet would bring regarding the environment?
Yeah, on the positive side, I think something we are really excited about is the opportunity to chart a new course for the right of center. We think that, the Biden administration has obviously made it clear that climate and the environment is a priority. And with that, the GOP needs to come to the table with something, which I think leaves a lot of ground for us to actually begin discussing these and finding the best solutions rather than, just hammering constantly against the Green New Deal.
Yeah. And I mean, I think on the flip side of that, the Green New Deal, and there was a lot of discussion during the debates of, Biden said he really wasn't for it. He was for his version, but he had it on his website. I mean, those are very semantic opinions. What's your take on if there is some form of either the whole Green New Deal or a Green New Deal light?
I'm not personally worried about the Green New Deal as it stands. It's not popular even within the Democratic Party. You see the establishment and the more progressive wing arguing over it constantly. And with a Republican-controlled Senate, I just don't see that being a factor whatsoever. I do think that under a Biden administration, we'll see measures as far as investing more in green energy, clean energy. I think we'll see a lot of reversing of the rollbacks that the Trump administration had put forth through the agencies. I think we'll probably see re-entering the Paris Agreement and, of course, setting the goal of net zero by 2050.
Yeah, no, those are all great points. What's one policy area that maybe hasn't gotten a lot of coverage that we're not talking about that, ACC or you would like to see discussed more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are solutions to climate change that could be very, very popular if we were to talk about them more. And interestingly enough, those are usually the solutions that would reduce emissions the most. So things like nuclear power are not being discussed nearly enough. Things like carbon capture technology, and even things such as natural solutions. Planting trees is an amazing way to reduce emissions. Trees naturally sequester carbon. And there are so many opportunities like the three examples that I just provided that would help us reduce emissions, and that are fairly bipartisan. I think those are things that if you're actually sitting at the table and having a conversation, you can agree on those three things. Yeah.
I mean, I completely agree. I think one of those we can drill in more is, California recently, Governor Gavin Newsom said, in 10 years, he would like to ban the sale of new gas-powered cars. So he wants to push, the electric. He wants to get rid of combustion engine. I mean, is that something? A, is that good free market policy? And B, maybe is he just trying to set that up that by that time most of us might have electric vehicles? Do you guys have a take or a stance on that?
I don't think that that's strong policy. Our organization actually just took an electric road trip all around the country over 50 days.
Okay.
We had a Tesla, and we had different stops in different communities to hear about what they were doing. But what we found was that while we were driving an all-electric car all over the country, there were some aspects that were really, really cool, but frankly, the infrastructure just wasn't there. And it took a lot of effort for us to get from stop to stop with the appropriate amount of charging. And in addition to that, the free market is already moving in that direction. GM has already announced that they're moving their production to entirely electric. So we don't need policies like Gavin Newsom is introducing.
No, that's a great point. And it does, I guess the only saving grace is it does seem so far ahead that I think a lot of car companies might already be there, and we might already be there as, you know, consumers, but we'll see. Let's jump to you real quick. This is always a nice ending session we do. How did you get involved in ACC? And we always say, what advice would you have for someone looking to get involved in a similar line of work?
Yeah, absolutely. I got involved with ACC in the very beginning. I was on the founding team. I had already been involved in right of center politics, and Benji Backer, our founder, and I were good friends. And so he came to me with this idea, and I was in right away because the environment is something I've always been very passionate about. Yeah. I grew up in a left of center home. My dad works in the solar industry. We went to national parks all the time. So it's something that was always very close to my heart, and to be able to work on it from an angle that satisfied my personal values was very fulfilling to me. I think some advice that I would give to people who are looking to do the same thing is not to underestimate yourself. Something that our team oftentimes jokes about is the fact that we're all very young and we're running a major organization by ourselves. And so imposter syndrome is something that can occasionally creep in. Sure. But when you look back at all the things that we've accomplished, it's really been incredible, and we're deserving of everything that's come our way. And so I think that young people particularly need to know that they can make a difference and that they should believe in themselves.
No, that's great. I think imposter syndrome is great advice. I think a lot of people suffer for it. I think younger folks do. So I think that's good. You know, the fake it till you make it is true, but then I think a lot of people, more than they realize, have made it many places.
Right. They make it much sooner than they think.
Yes, that's exactly. Well, last one, and you know, I stopped asking this, but since I feel like everyone's headed into COVID shutdowns again, what was one project or hobby you picked up during COVID during 2020?
This is actually such a fun question. Something that my friends and I started doing as a result of COVID was putting together trivia nights where we would all FaceTime each other and play trivia, and we would come up with the questions ourselves. So it would oftentimes turn into us like roasting one another and picking fun. So I think that was definitely a positive to come out of COVID.
That's great. And that is a great idea for any bar owners listening, or anyone looking for something to do. Well, I'll leave you the last word, and then we'll sign off.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Evan. It's been awesome to be a part of this. I've loved this discussion. And if anyone is interested in checking out our work further, I would encourage you to go to our website at acc.eco.
All right. Danielle, thanks for coming on.